Enhancing 21st Century Competencies for Digital Natives and Immigrants as part of the International Seminar on Advancement Leadership Program for Present and Future Educational Leaders, sponsored by the Enlightened Group for Quality and Excellence in Education, October 19 through 20, 2019, at the Venezia Hotel Subic Bay, Olongapo, Philippines. Hi, this is Dr. Davis, and I am so happy to be with you via video from the United States, and I greet you on behalf of my colleague professors at Troy University in the College of Education. There is where I serve as an associate professor in instructional leadership. So the students that I work with are pursuing master's, educational specialists, as well as PhDs in leadership. Now, the session that I have, I think, fits very, very nicely with this overall theme that the Enlightened Group has put out about Advanced Leadership Program, focusing on the issues related to 21st century competencies. And we know that in this century, things are going to change dramatically with how we educate students and the tools that we use, as well as the resources. And we need leaders and classroom teachers as well who are comfortable with those 21st century skills and the abilities for that matter too. And so what I aim to do in this session is really kind of talk about two aspects here. First, what skills do students need to have? Because I'm an advocate for students having skills. I want them to have knowledge, yes, but I would rather that they have skills that they can use to get a job when they graduate from high school. And we know that content knowledge is great and it's important, but if you don't have any skills, you can't trade those skills for a job then. You have nothing to offer an employer. Now, you may know everything there is to know about English history, but the reality is if you don't have any work-related skills, it's going to be very tough to get a job. And so I'm going to take about half of this presentation to talk about the necessary skills that have been identified as important to graduates during the 21st century. And then I'm going to talk about competencies that leaders and teachers, for that matter, need to have as well. Now, I define a competency as an ability that has been demonstrated and has been shown to be effective. And let me kind of delve into that just for a moment here. There are a lot of people who have knowledge of many, many different subjects, but they have no experience in using that knowledge. So, for example, I run across this at the university all the time, people who will have a PhD in educational leadership, but they have never been the leader of a school or an educational association. So I liken that to having the knowledge that you need to be a school leader without the actual practice. They don't have the competency. They have the skill maybe, but they don't have the competency, the demonstrated ability to do the job. And so we're going to talk about not only the skills that people need, the students need, but also we're going to talk about the abilities that the leaders need to demonstrate in order for those skills to be useful. Now, this session, it's slated for an hour and a half, and what I'm going to do is break it up into two parts. So you'll see a part one and a part two, so that it's not such a large file to email there, but also because I want you to have some time to do some discussing of the ideas that I'm presenting. Sadly, I can't be there to discuss them with you, but at least I can present these ideas, and then with the help of Dr. Ladja or someone else, they can lead a brief discussion about them. And since we have an audience that comprises some university presidents as well as administrators, and we also have some K-12 teachers and school leaders. So we have a very eclectic group of participants. I realize it's a small number, and that's okay because I like very intimate settings. We can have a little more dialogue because there isn't a large audience here with questions and all of that. At the end, you'll see my email address, so if you want to contact me, I'm going to give you a little heads up here. My email address is davisr@troy.edu. Again, that's davisr@troy.edu. And if you want to contact me about this presentation or others, feel free to do so. So let's get into our session today. Before we get too far into the presentation today, I want to talk about this term digital immigrant and digital native. Now you saw that in the title. That wasn't there just as what we call eye candy. In other words, something to attract your attention. It is there for a purpose. And it's to explain that in the 21st century, we still have a significant number of people who are still adapting to technology and how technology has impacted every facet of work today. And think about the kinds of work that we're doing today that rely heavily on computers. So let me explain. 2 weeks ago, I was in the Philippines, and I had been there for almost 2 months at that point, and now I'm back in the U.S. And one of the times I was out at Mall of Asia, there in Manila, and I stopped at the McDonald's restaurant. And of course, it's a very popular one. A lot of young people eat there. A lot of people who go to the mall, they'll eat there because, the food is reasonably priced and it's quick. And many people like American fast food. So, but I noticed this, and I've noticed this a long time. Imagine how different your experience would be at McDonald's if they did not have the computers at the checkout, and how difficult it would be for the workers to prepare your meal. Computers have made McDonald's what it is today. It's not just the food and whether you like it or not, or whether it's good for you or not, but think about the way that the food is prepared. Technology driven. We cannot cook it like you do a regular Filipino meal. It's all fried, and there are grills there, and all these machines make your little milkshake or your spaghetti or whatever it is that you're eating. Lots of technology in that restaurant. And it's not a lot about your cooking expertise. It's follow the instructions. You take the meat out of the little package, you put it on the grill, you cook it, you put those potatoes in the deep fryer, you cook them for 2 or 3 minutes, and you put them in a box and you hand it on a tray to somebody who pays maybe 200 pesos for it. So technology has become a vital part of many organizations like McDonald's and businesses to make them operate and make them very, very profitable for their owners. So I think it's important to talk about this distinction between how technology has impacted the business that we have and how people have adapted to it. So we've used 2 terms here, digital immigrant, digital native. And just a bit of a history lesson, this term was coined by a journalist by the name of Mark Prinsky back in 2001. And he had written an op-ed type piece to explain some of the reasons that at that time, now that's 18 years ago, at that time, why students were struggling in schools. And he was talking about how that there was a disconnect between the students in the classroom and the people teaching them. And he used these 2 terms to explain how there was this divide. The teachers were the immigrants, and the students were the natives. and basically saying that these students were used to a technology-rich world. This is how they communicated. This is how they learned. If they wanted to know something, they went online, they Googled it, how they communicated with their friends through all of the little chat rooms, and then, of course, as time has gone on, Twitter and FaceTime and of course early on Facebook for them, and now other things they use. And how their teachers were not like that. As a matter of fact, their teachers were not online, did not have an online presence, were not using the technology effectively in the classroom to educate this technology generation. So we've taken that term over the years and we've used it, and I think it's important then to make the distinction. What are we talking about? So someone that is a digital native is a person who's a part of a particular generation, and we're really talking about a generation from the early 90s onward, because that's really when technology switched from analog to more digital in its format. So it's a hardware thing, yes, but it also is describing a way of seeing the world, and how technology is not just a tool to make our life easier, it is the tool that we use to connect our lives. How we find our lovers and our significant others. We go to these kinds of websites like eHarmony and Match to find someone who's similar. And this happens in the Philippines all the time. As you know, many Westerners, Europeans, Americans, they find their Filipino counterparts online. They communicate online and then come over and meet them. So natives are people who are so thoroughly connected to technology that they can't understand life without it. And heaven forbid that their cell phone battery die, or they don't have minutes, they don't have a load for their phone because they can't communicate with all the people they need to communicate with. Now, the immigrants, on the other hand, describes a population who they've preceded the technology. They remember a time before cell phones. They remember a time before email. And that was how you communicated. You picked up the telephone, a landline, connected to the wall, connected somewhere, and you talked to somebody. Or you physically went and saw them to communicate. And that you didn't surf the net. And for these, they've had to really change how they act, because again, in order to teach this generation, you're going to have to understand this generation, and a big part of that understanding comes from understanding the technology. Take a look at this list. There are a number of items on it, beginning with leadership and ending with entrepreneurial skills, risk taker. What do you think they describe? Now, one of my assistants there is going to stop this presentation for just a moment so that you can talk amongst yourselves. Look at these things that are on this list. Some are skills, some are abilities. Who do they relate to? What do they have in common? Take a couple of minutes, not a long time, just a couple of minutes to look at these items. And then we'll pick up with what you think they are, and we'll have somebody give a few examples from the audience, and then we'll carry on. Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to look at this entire list, and you've come up with some ideas. Well, let me tell you that if you can't read the small print at the bottom of the slide from where you're sitting, know that the source of this list is from the United States 2016 Job Outlook Survey. And in this survey, employers were asked about the kinds of skills that they were looking for in entry-level college graduates. So entry-level jobs where someone had a college degree. These were the kinds of skills that they were looking for. Now, some of you in the audience, I understand, work in higher ed. And when you think about the programs at your institution, how many of the programs prepare college graduates with these kinds of skills? You see, employers are looking for people who have leadership ability, a leadership skill. They have an ability to work in a team environment. They know how to communicate and can communicate both not only in writing but electronically. So using Twitter, using email, using virtual meeting type software. But they're also looking for people who can solve problems, who are creative. People who will show up for work. They have a work ethic. They know what it is to put in an 8-hour day and not spend 6 hours a day on their cell phone tweeting their friends, but actually give an 8-hour day or a 10-hour day, whatever the work day is. They're looking for people who can demonstrate that they are go-getters. They have initiative. They're willing to work hard and try to achieve a great deal. But also people who can be analytical, that they have a skill of looking at problems in a certain way, a systematic way to resolve them, not just kind of pull something out of the sky, but can actually take time to break a problem down into its component parts, and then from that devise a solution. So all of these items on this particular list are related to what employers are looking for in their new hires. The question to ask then is, how many of your institutions are preparing your graduates with these skills and or abilities? And let's take it a step further back. How many high schools, whether they're comprehensive or not, are preparing students who can develop these skills? Or are we filling kids' heads with a bunch of content that they could find online instead of giving them the skills that they need to go and use that content? And use it in creative ways, use it in new ways. What really is the aim of public education or education in general at the secondary level or even at the tertiary level? Now, I realize that there'll be lots of people who will say, well, the purpose of education is not to prepare someone for work. You're right. We're not preparing them to work at Landmark or at a store, at SM, or work for a marketing company, or work for any kind of business per se. But what we are supposed to be doing is preparing them to work at a job. In other words, we need to give them generic skills or competencies that they are going to need in order to be successful in the 21st century. Now, I purposely joined skills and competencies here because competencies are those things that you have demonstrated you can do. Not just the potential to do, but that you've actually demonstrated. You are competent because you not only know what to do, but you have shown others that you can do that. So what is it that schools are really preparing students to do? And this is one of those questions that I don't expect you to answer today. But it is one that, as a result of this presentation, I hope that you'll think about and talk about with your stakeholders at your organization, whether it's secondary or tertiary, about what it is we're trying to produce. Are we just trying to produce people that have a lot of content knowledge, or people who have a lot of skills who can access content and then use it in ways that businesses and the ways that our societies need them to use it? Quiz question for you. Think about this for just a moment. How can we prepare the students that we have for their future if we are not prepared ourselves? Well, thinking about that question, the answer is obvious. We cannot. We cannot lead people where we are not willing to go ourselves. We cannot take them to places that we have not been ourselves. We have to go along with them. If we're going to prepare them for this 21st century and the successes that could be theirs and opportunities that may be theirs, then we need to be out in front making sure that they are well prepared for those opportunities. No matter what your position is in the school or within an organization for that matter, even if you're not the leader, you need to understand that there are new expectations being required of leaders every day. And it's not just because the 21st century has happened and now we're in this brand new frontier of life. We kind of maybe oversimplify or maybe we even over-exaggerate the changes that have come as a result of the 21st century. But we cannot dismiss the idea that there are new expectations. And some of those expectations are driven by technology. They're driven by social changes within our country, political changes, and maybe even business-related changes where there are new markets opening and new workers need to be prepared for those markets. So there certainly are new expectations. And the reality is this, that what we did in the past, while it may have been effective then, it is not going to be sufficient today to meet the challenges that we have. We need to develop a new paradigm, a new framework for how we lead 21st century organizations, or organizations that exist within the 21st century that are going to capitalize on the opportunities that have been provided to us. We can't continue to make an excuse for poor performance in our schools especially. That's just not going to be acceptable to our constituents, the parents, and to the governmental officials, the Department of Education, that we must report to. The idea of blaming others for missing opportunities is also not going to work, as people have set very high expectations for each leader of a school or an organization. My advice to you as you delve into this presentation today is, no matter whether you're a leader or not, stay current because it's almost impossible to catch up.